business boosting content, subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and like our posts.
All right, once again, a very good morning to all our attendees. I know we've got a big audience this morning. Why? It's because such an important topic, funding readiness and how to attract investors, how to secure funding, always all important. And of course, we know that the big brand behind this webinar this morning is Old Mutual, a powerhouse in SME funding. And of course, we've got an amazing speaker who I've had the opportunity of meeting offline earlier. He's an entrepreneur. He's, of course, a close associate and support consultant towards Old Mutual, but he's going to tell you more about that. And his name is Njabulo Skhosana. And please, Njabulo, join me on stage and let's have a quick chat. Njabulo,
morning, Mike.
Good to see you again. And this morning, I'm truly grateful. I've just welcomed all our attendees. And just before we kick off, and I chat to you, Njabulo, just a couple of important points. As we know, internet, we know technology, it can falter at times. Fortunately, it hasn't happened to us yet. But if we do disappear for whatever reason, don't leave us. We will be back. But again, to make this webinar or experience even more exciting, tell us where you're from. Tell us, are you excited? Tell us what you're expecting this morning. And of course, we know that there's one thing that my wish is this morning, I know Njabulo's wish, is that you can leave this session with clear insight to take your step one step further in becoming funding ready and well prepared to, of course, attract investors and funders. So again, to everybody, what's also important is that you will all receive a replay of this webinar. So there's no need to take notes. You will receive the replay. It will be sent to you after this experience. So, and often these replays allow you to really slow the pace down and extract even more from the conversation. So, Njabulo, back to you. Truly grateful to have you on board this morning. I found you extremely interesting this morning, chatting to you offline. But again, a very big thank you to Old Mutual and, of course, to yourself. But before we start, I know you're an entrepreneur and I know you're a special advisor to Old Mutual. Give us more insight into your background, Njabulo.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, Mike. I think, key thing to your first point that I'd really love to get across is just knowledge sharing. This is a topic that I'm deeply, deeply passionate about. As you mentioned, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm actually a two-time founder, mainly working within the healthcare space. Right at the beginning of COVID, I actually started a digital health business called Health Dart. You can kind of consider it an Uber for pharmacies type of business that was there with a telemedicine component. And at the moment, I'm also running a biotech company, basically doing drug discovery, trying to find new pharmaceutical drugs from African medicinal plants. But as I mentioned, a broader thing that I'm really passionate about is just enabling the success of SMEs within the market. And I think that's how I found myself also working very closely with a great team at Old Mutual that's building a range of financial and non-financial solutions to actually help SMEs catalyze growth, become funding ready, and grow the South African economy, I think, into the powerhouse that it really should be.
Njabulo, I've been informed, and I mean maybe you can elaborate further. All our attendees here this morning, funding is a big word, and apparently you have attracted millions in funding. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Within the kind of tech startup space, I've raised over 20 million rand, essentially from local and international investors. Working across the different businesses that I've mentioned there. And that's in two very different businesses. The first one was B2C. This one's more B2B with a deep tech component. So it's given me a nice flavor of the different types of funding challenges that might be there and what funders think. And also, I think further to that, I spent some time working as a management consultant, actually working for private equity companies or advising private equity companies investing in healthcare infrastructure across Africa. That was for a few years before I actually became an actual entrepreneur. And actually, I think on the deals that I worked on, just under R1 billion in funds were dispersed into infrastructure and a bunch of other things. So I've had the fortune, I think, over the last decade to work across different lenses, of that funding ecosystem, including at Old Mutual, where we're also trying to roll out some, I think, niche, unique, and helpful solutions to plug some of those other funding gaps that are there.
So, Njabulo, like our attendees, you're at the coalface day to day as well, eh?
Yeah. It's the only place to be. It's where I get my energy from.
Well, first of all, very big congrats to you and well done on your successes. Always lovely to hear a success story at the NSBC. So let's get straight into it, Njabulo. I just want to ask you a strange question that may sound. What does funding readiness really mean?
Great question. So I think it's a many-layered question. I always think it should start with what your business objective is and what stage you're at. Technically, getting grant ready is a form of funding readiness, and that may be where a really, really early stage business is, and that could be through ESD or some sort of like other grant that's there. How you prepare yourself when you're ready in that context is very different to, say, becoming funding ready for growth or scale financing when you reach a certain stage in your business. The other layer to that is it may not necessarily always also be about scale. It could also be about your business model. If you're running a bricks and mortar business, with high cash flow, being funding ready there, versus, for example, the current thing I'm working on, which is very deep tech IP based, being funding ready in that context is also different. So I think it's twofold. One is understand the stage that your business is in terms of its growth phases. And then secondly is understand the industry or the business model that you're in, and how you configure yourself to become funding ready is really determined by, a function of those two things, if I were to put it straightforward.
Njabulo, here's the big one. What are the most common mistakes you see founders make when looking for funding or approaching investors?
Great. So funnily enough, this one is where you've got a lot of commonality, despite how you might be configured. I think just having your books in order, for example, whether you're a big business or large business, you've got to make sure that your books are in order, that your numbers, that you understand the things financially and non-financially that drive your business. And that you're also able to kind of communicate those things clearly. I think a lot of funding is also about storytelling. There are lots of great businesses, but maybe they don't always position themselves in the most appropriate way to give themselves the best chance of funding. So I think that's like one element of it. The other side of it, in terms of like actual, that level of like preparedness, is I think also making sure that you're speaking to the right funders, and what it is that they're kind of looking for, so you can position things properly. But I'll pause there and we can maybe deep dive on some of the things. I'll hand it back to you.
Great, Njabulo, yes. And then, of course, another key area is what types of funding solutions should SMEs consider depending on their stage of growth?
Yeah. So I think this is also a very multi-layered question. I'll maybe give some contextual examples. Let's say I'm in the manufacturing space. Maybe I've got some small scale manufacture, but I'm looking to de-risk in terms of buying. I'll give a practical example actually, without naming a particular business. Let's say someone's into some sort of cosmetics manufacture. They've got their processes lined up. They've got a background in the space. Maybe they're making some of these types of things at home. And there's a desire to actually develop the product to a stage where it's suitable to get into a large retailer. I think in that case, provided you've got some sales, you've proven you can do the product, you maybe know what machinery it is that you kind of like need to buy. A good option for you at that stage may be actually engaging, with an ESD department within a retailer that would help give you that technical capacity as well as the access to markets. having access to markets, and basically maybe having some sort of takeoff agreement, and the technical assistance to meet the criteria to supply that type of product is going to put you in a better place to be able to then get scale funding from a bank or some sort of other private institution from there. So I think it's important to know what that broader ecosystem is that you need to plug into, where it is that you may be able to tap into different types of funding for the type of business that you're kind of like going into. And then having a, I think, strategic framework around, once you've hit milestone A, how is it that you plan on engaging with other funders and so on to drive that growth in your future milestones. You and I also offline spoke about a totally different context, which is starting a business without any money. I think that's also something very, very, like viable. There are ways, I think, with the internet and digital, especially if it's like B2C, where for very, very low cost, you could get some of those proof points, provided you're running it sustainably and, you've got your operations in place and kind of grow your business from there. And then you make, whatever strategic decisions it is that you need to make at that point, with what to do. Yeah.
Yeah, Njabulo, I like what you said there, and we did chat about that, and I get over the many years since when I started NSBC 17, 18 years ago, the big question is, Mike, I'm starting out my business. Where do I go for startup funding? And I've learned over the years that, and I have to be blunt, it's almost impossible to get funding to start a brand new business. It's just almost impossible. And I don't want, Njabulo, I don't want aspiring entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs to spend months and months trying to get that funding to start a business, because they are wasting invaluable time. So I actually, even up until a number of years back, I write a lot of articles for global publications. I talk about it at various international forums, in how to start a business with no money. And this is what I've done, and this is why I've helped. And a lot of people aspire to that, because there are so many businesses. We both know there are so many businesses that you could start with no money, or let's say a little bit of money, a few thousand rand, to get yourself ready, maybe your computer or your email or your little bit of online presence. But that's tiny investment. That's not real money. And to search what types of businesses are out there that I can start with little or no money. And then as you start building your successes, and in time, when you start to gain for that, when you've got some track record, that's when it's easier to borrow money for growth. Growth funding based on your successes will give you that opportunity to access funding. And I've got amazing entrepreneurs who followed that advice, and I'm still very closely attached to them. Massive success stories have come out of this. And I'm not saying that, look, people say, well, where would I go for startup funding? Well, basically, the only real places to go are family and distant family, and who are prepared to put some risk at the table and fund. But if one can really borrow money for the right reason and reduce that risk, then that's big advice from myself, because there's always a place for good funding. I've got a printing business, and my business is growing. I need another printing machine. That's good funding. That's good funding. It's sensible funding. But to borrow money for the wrong reason, one must really take a closer look at that, because at the end of the day, when you go out of business, your family goes out of business. Your children don't go to school. So we are very strong on funding for the right reason. But funding is important. There's no way around that. It is important, and it's sensible to borrow money for that right reason. So sorry for that little bit of a tangent there, but I just, I love talking about that and helping entrepreneurs. But let's get back to yourself, Njabulo. How is Old Mutual Corporate SME closing the funding gap for SMEs?
Yeah, maybe before I come to that one, it's also just important with your previous point to note a common frustration that you've said around that challenge of getting access to funding. It really comes down to a structural issue with the National Credit Act. companies, for them to qualify for funding, and lenders to be able to responsibly lend to them, typically have to be earning over R1 million and be profitable, unless it's for something like purchase order financing, where you're basically getting some sort of financing to deliver on a contract. So that is a key thing that's there for businesses to note. And I think the advice you've given around how to build that capacity so you will qualify when the time comes is just a point I wanted to add to what you're saying. It's not something that you'll just get the funding immediately when you suddenly need it. You have to be strategically prepared to get yourself to the point that when that time comes, you tick all the boxes. That allows me to actually segue to your second question, which is how Old Mutual helps. We actually take a very holistic approach, as I mentioned at the beginning, giving people financial and non-financial support to kind of get them into a thriving state as a business. From a non-financial perspective, I think is where we focus quite a lot of investment building a platform called SME Go. One of my personal struggles that I had, especially very early in my entrepreneurial career, was just managing a lot of the admin, or finding that right balance between how do I focus on objectives that are going to help me grow my business, finding customers, learning what it is that they actually need, developing those products and focusing there. And then the admin side, which could be everything from payroll, making sure my legal is right, making sure I'm paying things on time, and my books are in order, etc., etc. And we've essentially kind of developed this platform to ease the burden or carry that burden alongside the entrepreneur of how to do that. So there are different modules in there which do lend themselves in the end to funding readiness. So I'll come to the funding bit last, but we've got a billing and payments portion. So this is, getting, invoicing done through the actual platform, being able to process certain types of payments through the actual platform itself. We're actually working on some integrations with the main big accounting platforms, which I think is very useful for maybe slightly larger and medium-sized businesses, or the larger end of small and medium-sized businesses that are there, to make the platform suitable for them. We also have a great HR, payroll, and legal module in there, which essentially lets you have fully SaaS compliant HR management, including payroll processing done from within the SME Go platform. But a really innovative thing that we love in there is the legal component, where you'll know as yourself, often legal, getting legal contracts drafted and all sorts is like a grudge purchase. We have it built in there where we've worked with lawyers, we've got it in the actual platform, and they're like 80 plus common legal templates, from employment letters, letters of demands, NDAs, and all sorts that you can actually get within the platform. And it's also AI powered with how you kind of put that together. The idea is to have all of that there to offset that back office effort essentially, and that's within the SME Go. And then we've got the growth enabling portion of things, which is funding, and then getting access to corporate contracts, as well as a marketplace that we're launching soon, which is really for the companies on SME Go to find each other, learn about each other, and kind of like do business. So that's set up threefold to help them with management of the business, as well as then accessing tools to help them grow their business. So we kind of take that holistic approach, realizing that you need enablement of businesses, and we can do that through technology, as well as defragmenting. So instead of going to a million places to get all those services, we kind of want to give you one set place where you can get the bulk of what you need. And on the back of that, we've then also got a way to use that data to make more informed funding decisions on those companies through Old Mutual. And then, there'll be a range of other funding products and things that we add over the coming years. So that's pretty much, what the approach is. We see ourselves as a partner to the actual businesses. If they win, we win, and everyone wins, and the whole kind of like ecosystem does. So it's really just about getting that baseline in place, being able to enable that end goal. I'm happy to deep dive into any of that. I know it is like quite a bit, but it's something that as the team at Old Mutual is very passionate about. And they've got myself and other entrepreneurs, in fact, who are actively working with them closely to make sure that we solve real problems, rather than just giving a stock standard thing without really understanding the challenges that business owners face.
Njabulo, thank you for that insight. I've got a good question that's just come through on my WhatsApp. Njabulo, are you able to do you have a help us on how to actually prepare? What documents should I prepare? How can I prepare myself and my business so when I do decide to access funding, I'm ready? Like credit scores, for example, or
Yeah.
financials or management accounts. Can you give a concise advice on what should I do to prepare?
Yeah. One thing I always tell any entrepreneur is, as early as possible in your business, from day one, if possible, get an accountant, someone who's going to help you set up all of your stuff with SARS, UIF, or whatever. Even if you're not, going to be employing people immediately, kind of get it in place so you've got those basics there. Make sure that you file returns when you need to, even if it's a nil return, and just make sure that all of those things are in place. But get that done through a professional, so that you've got those basics in place. Then when the time comes and someone asks you for your management accounts or for annual financial statements, you're not scrambling and suddenly have to spend kind of a lot of money. You'd be surprised how I think beneficial it is when funding decisions are made. The confidence that those investment committees, etc., will get from seeing a prepared funder with a data room that has all of the things ready to pull. So never underestimate, I think, the power of being prepared is one thing that I'd really share, and I'd implore every entrepreneur to kind of like do. There are also some nuances depending on the type of funder that you're going to. So like I was saying at the beginning, if you're approaching a bank versus a grant funding institution versus a venture capital or private equity institution, there'll be some nuances. And I think there each person kind of needs to do their own homework around what does that funder really need. And if you're unsure and you actually want to get funding from them, approach them and actually ask them, like, what are you looking for? And then make sure you've got the stuff ready. It's normally not always a quick process. In fact, often it can be, it takes multiple applications or it happens over months. So also be prepared to kind of like engage and share that information and give that sense of comfort is what I'd say there all around. But either way, whichever way it is, your compliance, I think, is at the foundation of everything. So don't skimp on that. Go out your way to make sure that you don't skimp on that. Essentially, it'll put you in a good place. The last thing that I'll mention that I've often seen, especially for earlier stage funding, you mentioned there's things like school fees and all sorts. But I think it's also very important to, as far as possible, separate your personal expenses from your business ones. I have seen cases where, there's a lot of personal expenses coming off a business and you could have a lot of revenue and all that, and even profit happening in the entity. But because you've got a mix of those two things, it leaves a sense of discomfort at that non-strategic expense from a funder perspective, which can scupper, a funding opportunity essentially. So also just getting that advice around how to appropriately separate those things, but still meet your personal day-to-day obligations, I think is a super important thing for most businesses to consider.
Njabulo, I love what you've said. I can't disagree with you at all. And just to add further to that, like you said, to be 100% compliant.
Yeah.
If you start trying to be compliant 3 years down the line and you owe SARS VAT and you owe SARS POIE, you're not going to recover. You're just not going to recover. And also, if you need to be able to get a tax clearance certificate at any instant moment.
100%.
And to try and rectify that down the line is not going to happen. You cannot do business with big business, with government, without a TCC or a CSD report. So ensure that you get that right. And like Njabulo said, engage with a good accountant. And not only that, is seize on top accounting software online. It's so inexpensive. It's so inexpensive. And you as a business owner can do it yourself. Start there. Get advice from an accountant. Become compliant. And also become BE compliant. You need those BE certificates. You need the TCCs, CSD reports. So build your compliance team now, because you can never recover down the line. And we engage a lot with SARS on this issue, and they will also assist you. Believe it or not, they will assist you enormously to be able to achieve that. And we at the NSBC can assist you at the same time. So get that accounting software. Talk to the NSBC. We've got all the partners on board who can assist you to achieve these objectives. So hugely important. I really appreciate that comment, Njabulo. We can't highlight this enough. And it's not just for the purpose of funding. It's if you don't build your foundation, you cannot build your castle. It's as simple as that. So great words, Njabulo. Thank you for that. We can talk all day. So I'm going to ask you, Njabulo, any final advice for SMEs currently seeking funding in this tough economic environment?
Yeah. I think this would be more of a recap on what we've said. Is if you figure out where the gaps are in your business, it could be financially, it could be compliance-wise, it could also be legal-wise. If I maybe touch on something that I didn't before, there've been cases, for example, where I've seen businesses that look great on paper, the ratios look good financially, but there's quite huge concentration risk, maybe with like one client. In that case, a funder is kind of like obligated, if they're doing their job properly, to look at the contracts that you've got with that client. And I've seen cases where there's no contract in place. It's just work that's being done and everything looks great. But the fact that there's no legal recourse in case, that gets canceled, or the other business, goes out of business and whatnot, it's inhibited that, the ability to actually get financing or funding in place. So just looking at where all those gaps are financially, compliance-wise, legally, strategically, with like your focus, I think is like super key. The second point that I'd also say is I think it's very important to be have that right balance between focusing on what your business needs right now to where you want it to go. Especially knowing where you want it to go. A framework that I really love is really backcasting. Like if maybe you want a really massive business, where you are now and the steps that you've got to take to get to that massive business are very different to if you say, I just kind of want to maintain it where it is, or I want to get it to a certain level and have it be like a lifestyle business. Do I want to go, if you're thinking strategically, at some point I need to get really, really large sums of funding, whether it's debt funding or like equity funding to get to a certain level. The steps that you're going to take to kind of get to that are going to be very, very different. So what I'd say is to people, as much as it can be very easy to kind of get sucked into the now and, the challenges that you're dealing with now, where possible, try take a step back and think about what that broader vision really is for the business. And then, what steps do I need to take relative to where I am now, to kind of be able to like get there. So I think having a good balance between knowing, what your goals and aspirations are, knowing where it is that you're going to like play, and knowing how it is that you're going to win as a business is like super key. And I think those are things where even like quarterly, just ask yourself those questions and reflect on what that process is. Just doing that alone is going to put you a a cut above the vast majority of other entrepreneurs that are already like out there, and it's going to put you in a better place to be able to get that funding and ultimately kind of like meet your goals. So it's a good balance between objective and subjective things that I think you kind of like need to do, to be able to enable that business success. And last thing, I think, just as a word of encouragement, it is difficult to get in, in other founder communities. and entrepreneur communities, learn from other people's like challenges, and figure out how to help each other. I think that's also part of the reason I'm passionate about these things. It's just sharing and seeing how you can help other people along their way. That goes a long way. You never know. You help someone with one small thing, it could even be a few years down the line, and that favor is returned in a way that you may not have been expecting. So I think also just being willing to give and contribute, it helps, and kind of like goes a long way.
Njabulo, wonderful words. And I will just take this opportunity to thank Old Mutual, your team, Njabulo, and what you do for SME South Africa and the rest, of course. And not only in the SME sector, but across the business sector. We are truly grateful. You're a big player in the SME funding, a big player, a national partner of the NSBC. And it's because of organizations and people like you, we can do what we do. So we're truly grateful. And we know that this morning, we've helped many thousands of business owners, entrepreneurs, and we know they're going to take something from this to be able to move closer to getting that all-important investor or funder on board. And just something quickly before I say goodbye, Njabulo, we will be launching in the next week or so, less than that, the all-important access to finance online. And years in the making. Of course, Old Mutual will be there. They're a big player in the SME funding. And this is where we're going to take the pain away to assist all our SMEs to be able to become funding ready and to access funding for SMEs on the go. So watch the space. We will make that announcement shortly. And then again, importantly, in about 6 weeks' time, the biggest B2B event in Africa and the world, the Business Show Africa, Sandton Convention Center. I know that our team's going to show a short video after this. If you haven't got your ticket, get your ticket. Right now, it's free. Big happening there. Also hosting the Access to Finance in Durban, plus many activities at the Business Show Africa. Make sure that you get your ticket. We're heading for a attendance of over 30,000 business owners over 2 days. It's an epic entrepreneurial experience, so please don't waste this opportunity. Grab that ticket. But again, Njabulo, to you and to Old Mutual, we're grateful for your time this morning, and thank you. I have no doubt that we'll be engaging again. And to all our attendees, have a great day further. We'll see you soon. Lots of good things are coming up, and don't forget to watch the video. Have a wonderful day further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.